Hello and God bless. I'm really struggling with the truth. What is the truth? I went to a couple of churches today and heard Christmas music, which was great. Because I'm afflicted in certain ways, and that these afflictions are spiritual, I've been trying just more and more to surrender to God. And I did that today. There was not an altar call, but they have one of the churches, like a room you can go to afterwards, and it's they call it a first steps room or something. And nothing in me, I just have to speak honestly. I mean, forgive me, Lord, if this is evil being spoken out of my mouth, but my commitment is just to be as honest as I can. And there's so much about Jesus that I love. You know, I'm on board with Jesus. Love Jesus. But with the Christian walk, what I keep bumping into is once you step further in the direction, like I went to this room and I said, Lord, or I met with this young man. They have a bunch of, I don't know if they're pastors or just kind of like, I don't know what their title is. I don't think they're all pastors because it's women in there and different things. Anyways, and I said, he said, what can I help you with? And I said, I want to give my life to Jesus. And it's funny that I would do something like that because I've been saying that for so long, and I've done sinner's prayer with other people, and this is maybe like the 5th time I've done this, though this was the first time I took the step at like a church to do it. So I guess that was what was kind of different. And gosh, I just don't at all feel resonant with so many aspects of what goes on. I mean, part of it is just the strong emphasis on the Bible and the Bible being true. And I gotta say, I don't know that I believe that. I'm certainly willing to believe whatever is actually true, you know? And as late in the game as it is in some ways for me to say something like this, I just want to heal. That's really what's true for me, is I want to heal. And I keep saying this, that I have to believe that healing and truth are synonyms. But there's a tricky thing that happens psychologically in these spaces that is actually it makes me feel very disoriented and sort of uneasy and nauseous and slightly panicked, is that there's this, I'm trying to think how to characterize it even. this idea, this notion that any resistance, like when I walked into this room, I didn't feel great panic, because part of me was thinking, well, what have I got to lose? I'm just struggling so much. So many people, so many testimonies. I know Jesus transforms people's lives. And I'm going to just take a leap. I keep taking, progressively taking more and more leaps of faith, and hoping that the belief and the recognition and the truth will catch up with me, that God will recognize the effort, even though I don't feel great alignment or something, like walking into that room to give my life to Jesus. Didn't feel great, and when I did it, it didn't feel like anything really. I mean, the guy was nice. I did it as humbly and sincerely as I could. But it wasn't like some powerful revelation. And if anything, I have this just sickening feeling of like, shoot, what the heck am I getting myself into here? Because I don't really want a church. I don't want a bunch of people. I don't want an ideology. I just want to heal. And so much of the walk is a mental thing. It's a belief thing. It's like, I went to this other church. I went to 2 services back to back, 2 different churches. And he's exegeting, is that the right word? Expounding on revelation. And I don't know. I'm just so burned on acquiring more knowledge. And, he has he was laying out this whole, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the tribulation, the New Jerusalem descending. He's preaching out of Revelation. I don't know. I mean, is that how it's going to go? I don't know. I just want to heal. I want to be held by Jesus. All that other stuff just feels so fucking dead, so dry. Excuse my language, but I'm just going to let it rip right now. So lifeless and so just not like living truth. It just feels, but one of the things I was going to say is there's this really kind of psychologically unsettling and potentially unhelpful dynamic of we have to kind of override. You can kind of find yourself in this position of feeling like, shoot, if my thoughts aren't perfectly aligned with this, if this doesn't feel perfectly aligned, it's because I'm being spiritually deceived. This is the devil. If it's not in the book, it's not what the preacher says, then it can't be true. It doesn't matter what you feel. And boy, that feels very dangerous psychologically to me. Just keep overriding my own intuition and man, like I just don't want beliefs. I want transformation. And the Christian walk, at least in these evangelical churches, and a lot of it is just those 2 things are the same. It's like you got to have the right beliefs. And most of the Jesus stuff, I actually don't have a huge problem with. I do see Jesus as king. Totally. Did he resurrect? I don't know, but I don't discount the possibility. That's not really a hang up for me. Miracles, nothing about that. That he, that I read through the Gospels, and I really don't have a lot of issues there. Then we get into the Bible is inerrant, the inerrant Word of God. We get into all the kind of Old Testament stuff, some of which is amazing, some of which is like, I don't know what's going on here. And I just don't feel a strong anything there. And I hate the feeling of being phony. And there's also this feeling when I'm in these spaces, just the level of consciousness, and I know this is sound judgmental, spiritual consciousness, spiritual development, something like that. I just don't, it just doesn't feel right to me. As simple, just put it in the simplest terms. Forgive me, God, but I know you want me to be honest and truthful. I don't want to just cram my head with a bunch of, they're telling me I need to be discipled and start going to fellowship and studying the Bible. I read the Bible every day. I'm probably more Bible literate than at least some, probably many. But I don't know, the whole thing just kind of makes me nauseous and sick inside. Because I feel like when you walk into the church, when you start moving in that direction, it's like you're surrendering into people and their beliefs. And I don't want any of that. I want Jesus, And the Christian response to that would be well, yeah, but Jesus and his teachings are lived out on the earth through churches. And one thing I'm worried about, because I have such a scrupulosity thing going on within me and puritanical streak, is I keep feeling this kind of like I have to go to the most, not extreme, but more, I don't know. I just feel very vulnerable to getting caught in a very kind of rigid and I don't know if literal is quite the right word here. Church, where it's like I just become more and more focused on getting the belief structure right, and my mind is just too simple at this point. I can't hold on to all that stuff. It has to be just simple for me. And so I have all this stuff going on inside me, and see, a Christian might say, well, that's the devil attacking you right now. And maybe, that's also a possibility. But I keep moving forward in this direction and thinking, not that I'm going to be totally delivered, not that I'm going to be totally healed, but if God really does want me to go against my instincts on all this stuff and keep going in this direction, I gotta get some indication that this is the right direction. And more it just feels like this is just not right. Not that I hate anybody there or hate anything. It's not like a hate or something, but and see that, yeah, and I am and there is a possibility that I've just drifted so far. I'm in such a state of fallenness, brokenness, that I just have no fucking clue, That when the preacher gets up and says, evolution is a lie, that's what the guy was talking about today. And I'm certainly open to an argument and finding out what's true. I mean, again, that's kind of my baseline, is just what is actually true here. And if it depends on me believing stuff, I'm just not going to be able to carry that. I'm too tired, I'm too broken. But if it's Jesus showing up in my life and transforming me from within, beautiful. Beautiful. I just don't have a lot of energy for something else. I have the energy to surrender. I also don't want to just commit and get a bunch of people involved in me and pouring energy into me and developing all these relationships when it's not something I really feel is the right direction for me. I mean, my spiritual path up till now has unfolded just through kind of a natural attraction to stuff. But I'm kind of hitting this wall where it no longer feels like that. It feels like I'm just having to adopt an ideology. And I've done that in the past. And what's scary is how convincingly I was able to take that on and be sort of missionary even about the ideology that I was wrapped up in. There's echoes of that, major echoes with all this stuff where it's like, I don't know if I really believe all that. And I really don't like being social. That's another thing about church. It's a lot of people who are either phonies, excuse me for being judgmental. Well, I mean, I can't really say that, actually. Let me scratch that. That are doing their best to believe. It's a lot of people that are very extrovert. There's just an energy there that I find so aggravating, like intrusive and just, get the fuck away from me kind of a feeling. I'm so willing to have God show me otherwise. To have God, and part of my commitment to this is just to show up and just say, God, I'm here. Speak to me. This doesn't feel right. It feels weird. It feels off. Energy here feels weird to me. Everything feels weird. I don't feel settled. I don't feel in my body. I don't feel in my heart. I feel anxious. I've gone up for prayer. I've talked to pastors, It's like, it's not like I haven't made, I think, genuine efforts. I mean, today, twice I gave my life over to Jesus in the presence of somebody else. But what that implies in these churches and what that walk implies just ain't me. It just does not feel like me. I'm worried about continuing to force myself in that direction, something that feels very kind of imbalancing for me. And done deliverance prayer. I mean, I keep pushing into this discomfort and thinking, maybe there's just a barrier here of satanic, demonic oppression that I'm under. And I just got to keep pushing and keep pushing. But I just feel like I keep getting sicker and sicker. Less well and less well, more, I wouldn't even say it's anxious exactly. It's just like, I feel very not good after going to these experiences. so part of me thinks I need to just relax. Again, let God reveal these things to me. Maybe I'm, what's the word? Pushing the river too much. Is that the right expression? I actually do feel a lot more peace in a Catholic church. If I'm just going to be totally honest from the gut, there's something about this evangelical church, and there's this like pushiness or this edge or this, it almost feels like something slightly manipulative. Can't think of exactly the right word, and forgive me, I'm not trying to upset anybody, but cult-like, I guess. Now these churches, at least the ones that I've been to, are 1,000 miles from like a major cult or something like that, and so that's not exactly the right word to use here, but there's some flavor of that. There's like a coerciveness built into the system. My spirit just feels this coerciveness around, like any disagreement is the devil. I have to kind of quash or ignore my own truth, my own feelings, my own doubts. And again, it could just be that I'm so sick that moving in this direction is exposing the illness, and I just need to keep moving. But boy, I feel like pushing myself much further could really be damaging for me. See, what I would love is to have true transformation, and that everything downstream from that just falls into place. On the other side of that transformation, on the other side of that deliverance, on the other side of that healing. And there's just conviction there in a wholesome, healed way. Like I was having these guys pray over me today at church, and they were saying the angels are rejoicing that the Son of God has come home, and they were praying that I go out and I spread, the news that, I'm part of this kingdom, I'm part of this family. But I don't feel that. I'm sorry to say. But I would love to. I would love. See, the thing I was trying to say is I would love to be so transformed that it just overflowed out of me, effervesced, radiated, emanated from me. That I moved with true conviction, not just trying to impose my beliefs, but to share a radical transformation. I want that testimony. I pray to God every night. I surrender to you, Lord. Transform my life such that I have a true testimony to give. And it's not just me believing my way into something, that it's not just surface deep. Salvation through Jesus is possible outside of the church. See, that's something I don't really know. There are times I pray to Jesus when I'm really struggling, especially at night when I lay down, and I just ask him to cover me. And I do feel comforted. I do feel held. And there's just 1,000 points of contact where I feel so much love for Jesus. It's just that next step. What does that next step look like? When it concretizes into talking to somebody, I just hear in their level of consciousness, in their energy, in the words they use, in the way they describe stuff. doesn't feel like Jesus. It doesn't feel like that deep peace. It feels like I gotta coerce you into a specific set of beliefs. And anyways, what I want is truth. What I want is peace. What I want is healing. What I want is true transformation. And maybe I've received that. There's certain ways in which I have felt like a rebirth, an anointing, a transcendent peace. Maybe I have received that, and I'm doing too much, trying too hard, that I'm not being called into the church right now, at least not in the way that I've been approaching it. I'm not being called into attending Bible studies and fellowships and deliverance, and I don't know. And I'm very, very weary of trusting anybody that isn't Jesus, that isn't God. I've been visiting other realms, you could say dimensions, spiritual realms, astral realms, I don't know what you want to call them. And when I struggle with something, I ask God, let me become lucid when I sleep tonight, because I found that I can interface with higher intelligence or other intelligence. Is it higher? It seems like it is. When I'm struggling with somebody, which I am right now, one of the things that's on my mind is, God, do you want me to confront this person? Is this something I should let go? What's going to be the maximal gesture, the maximal healing step that I can take? Even if it sucks, even if it's confrontation, whatever, I'm willing to take it if it's the right direction. But I don't trust myself, and I don't fucking trust anybody else. And so I have this access to these other realms. It's like, well, this is something that's at least beyond me. And sometimes I have had pretty remarkable experiences in these other realms, spiritual experiences. But are they trustworthy? And so I did that last night. I was really struggling to sleep, and I surrender. Whatever you need me to do, God. Got to sleep, started going lucid. You know what's interesting in these realms? This is so kind of esoteric and niche. I don't know if anybody would ever connect with this, but I find there's a lot of sexual energy and things in these spaces, and that I can easily get kind of lost in exploring sexual appetite in these realms. Sorry if that is TMI, and I'm not proud of it. I'm a little bit ashamed of it maybe, but I don't think either of those really applies. I think it's just what happens. And I find that interesting because the moment I go lucid, it's like two doorways open when I come into these realms. And one is I can kind of get lost and dissipated into pursuing some kind of a sexual encounter with some woman, being. And thereby kind of lose the chance of doing anything sort of meaningful spiritually, doing any healing. And that has happened countless times where I just go that route. It's almost like there's this, it doesn't feel so embodied for me to say it's Satan, but it is like there's this temptation. It's like the lower nature and the higher nature. And the moment I come online into these realms, it's like this potentiality wakes up in me. And there's this strong pull in that direction. But if I'm real conscious or surrendered, or I don't know what the differentiating factor is, I can stop there, which is a great act of discipline. You know, I've been celibate for a long time. Let's just go full TMI here. And intentionally so, as a spiritual practice. Because, as a young man, I realized how that was a kind of addiction for me, sexual gratification. With partners, with other women, and also just, by myself. And porn got to be a big part of that. And man, that's just such a dangerous, that's just such a dangerous route. That's such a dangerous addiction. And by God's grace, and really I have to give myself credit just through a commitment to feeling and burning in the fire. Because addiction, one kind of underlying shared feature of it across, a variety of addictions is it's a way of managing discomfort inside of us, running from emotions, running from energy. And so it's a kind of self-medication. When something uncomfortable comes up, grab a cigarette, hit social media, drink some alcohol, porn, masturbation, overindulge on junk food, exercise, whatever. There's so many different things, but kind of the underlying thing is that avoidance of pain and inner distress. And so I could say by God's grace, I have to think that the whole thing all the way through is grace, but I also want to give myself credit for being willing to sit in that fire and do something that's so countercultural. We've got an entire economic system, entertainment industry, just billions of dollars, the attention economy pumped into creating this matrix around us that's like this enslavement machine. And it's not just one machine, it's coming at us from 1,000 different directions, as a way to extract energy and money and time and attention. And so it's a massive thing to take a stand against all of that and to burn in the fire and to not just keep going down the addictive route. Anyways, I guess the point I was trying to make is it's interesting to see how it started out for me, this celibacy experiment. I guess you could say abstinence in a sense. And just dealing with all the stuff as it comes up rather than finding an unhealthy outlet, just feeling the feelings. It's interesting to see how that's become reflected in more subtler dimensions of my life. You could say the subconscious. I don't totally like that term, and I don't want to get into that right now, but let's just say that as a shorthand. How that commitment for me over time has percolated into deeper aspects of my being and psyche, such that even in these really unconscious states of dreams and stuff where and other realms where all the madness of the species is present. I mean, there's no shame in those realms, just the horrifying things that can happen to you and be perpetrated by you in these realms, because it's such a deeply unconscious, deeply wounded, deeply darkened part of our spirit, and of the collective consciousness of humanity, perhaps. I think that's not controversial to say. That over time, this commitment to burn in waking reality has started to seep into these deeper dimensions, at night for me, where I'm starting to gain more and more sovereignty, more and more choice, more and more agency, more and more free will, more and more prowess isn't quite the right word. I wouldn't want to say mastery at all. That's not, I need to be way more humble than that, but more and more self-restraint or discipline or choice or awareness, something like that, where again, 20 tangents, but weaving it all, tying it all back together, tying it all back together. I wake up within that another realm, become conscious of, okay, I'm in my spirit right now. And there immediately, it's like totally coincident, and maybe actually the sexual temptation, that's not quite the right language I want to use, but let's just say that sexual temptation, I think, slightly precedes becoming fully conscious, and it's become like a bell that wakes me up once my consciousness starts to move in that direction. It's like this other thing can come online, and I can stop that momentum, stop that inertia before it becomes, before I get lost in that. And thank you, God, and thank you, this healing path, that I've come to that. I'm not such a victim of that or slave to that. Sexual expression feels good, definitely does, but there's something deeply, I don't know if unhealthy is quite the right word. There's a deeper freedom, the freedom to not have to do that. And when I am able to stop that momentum and pull back and just kind of stabilize in these other realms, I can engage, and I can ask questions, and I can start to do some healing work on myself. And I'm struggling with certain spiritual afflictions, so I found that to be important. But now, one thing that I've noticed is I can talk to higher intelligence in these realms. And I've been taking their advice on some things, because it feels like at least it's not my own mind, which is so divided, so confused on so many things. And I'm just tired of the doubt and the uncertainty. It's like, I'll take a higher being if I can get one, That's how I felt. And so I followed their advice on some things, consequential things. I've asked, and you get replies. And they're interesting replies, and they're novel. However, I find myself in a cycle that seems to be not very helpful. And there's all kinds of religious admonitions, even if you're not a Christian, but of talking to other spirits. And in my mind, whenever I do this in these realms, I always say, let me speak to God, I'm definite, or Jesus, let me speak to God. I'm not coming at this prideful, like I'm the great, spiritual guru talking to ascended masters. That's never been my thing. And if it sounds like I'm explaining it that way, that's not really the nature of it. It's just I'm suffering, and I need something that has greater wisdom, that's less temporally and conditionally tied to this reality, that has something more approaching an absolute wisdom. And when I pray in waking life, I can go down 25,000 different rabbit holes, and they all just end with more anxiety. And I'm never sure about the guidance I'm getting. Is this from God? Anyways, so I've been trying this other route. And there's something pretty convincing about their voices, because they're calm. They seem to be coming from a totally unconcerned place. There's like a detachment there that you just sense energetically. They often speak a kind of, they often give these simple answers, but that seem multi-layered, that work on a number of different levels. They somehow simultaneously speak to, it seems to be a higher wisdom, a higher intelligence. However, I want to be discerning, and I am desperate for relief. And even though nothing in me really feels like this is a deception, I've started doing, and I did this last night, an additional step where I asked the intelligence, I asked God, God, do you want me to, in this case, confront this person? And I had to ask twice, and it's almost like there's static in the connection. I have to like really kind of attune and hear the response and get still. And it sounded like the response I got was something like, so be it, or like an affirmation. It was a short affirmation. I'm trying to remember what the words were, but it wasn't totally clear. And then I had a follow-up question that I keep forgetting to ask, but I asked this time. I said, if this really is you, Lord, I know you won't be afraid. I didn't say all this, but this is my thinking. I know it wouldn't be a bad thing for me to ask for some kind of a confirmation that this is really you talking to me. And I'm glad I did that, and I'm going to start doing that from now on. But I said, if this is really you, Lord, would you please give me a Bible passage that I can remember, that when I come out of this state, when I wake up, I can go to that Bible passage and it will be clear, that I'm getting the green light on something, not vague, but it'll be relevant and clear. And it was interesting when I asked that question, they didn't, whoever it was, whatever that intelligence was, actually one of the responses sounded like my grandfather, which is kind of interesting, but they didn't give a response, or I can't remember what they said, but I definitely didn't get like, of course, my son, here's a Bible passage, this is coming from God. And that came as a relief, because I hate confronting people, and I have to think this is not God's desire that I keep getting into these. Anyways, there's a lot of confusion in this video, and it's because I'm just being naked about where I'm at, exploring all this stuff. Again, I'm open to truth. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And you can hear, hopefully, the sincerity, and you can hear also the Christian inflection and Christian flavor of the walk for me. That, even in that state last night, what mattered to me and what would have been convincing to me is to ask for a Bible passage. And I also have the sense that, and I've had this experience in other realms, I've been attacked, I hate even saying that out loud, because it's like you speak it into existence, so forgive me if I'm saying something wrong here, but I found in these other realms that the name of Jesus Christ, not always, not in every case, but often does carry a kind of power and protection. And so I haven't figured it all out. I continue just to be honest with God. God, you shine a light on me. You gave me a discerning mind. You gave me intelligence. You gave me a rational mind. You gave me intuition. You gave me a body that I think you want to be healed and whole. And that there's some kind of guidance system there that when I move in directions that don't feel aligned, that aren't pouring goodness and healing into me, or at least indicating that direction, that's something to pay attention to. I don't think you want me to just psychologically brutalize myself. I think you want me to feel peace, and that I've done enough. I want to trust that I've done enough, and that you'll continue to come to me. And if I remain humble and open and willing to have truth revealed to me, that you will not disappoint me. That I not create idols out of belief systems, idols out of churches, but that there's living water, living truth, living peace. And I am more than willing to serve you however you would have me do it, Lord. And I surrender to whatever you would show to me. that it would be the truth. Anyways, may you be well. Forgive me any mistakes in this video. Forgive me my confusion. God bless. God bless. Jesus, may you come forth. God, may you come forth. May you reveal the truth in the hearts of men. In my heart. Take care.